So let's talk about the pillars of performance today. So the first pillar of performance, in my experience as a coach, is, let's call it conditioning. And conditioning is basically consistent endurance training over a long period of time, like a slow burn. It's not down to days. It's not down to individual sessions. It's not even down to weeks or months. In fact, it's down to years. And conditioning is the bedrock. And sometimes we lose this focus on conditioning. And realistically, conditioning is the bedrock of all performance. So if you're not well conditioned, you're not going to race well. If you're not well conditioned, you're going to be prone to injury. If you're not well conditioned, you're going to be prone to sickness. If you're not well conditioned, you will be prone to overreaching. So it really is a year in and year out proposition of the correct work at the right times. So it's doing the appropriate work at the appropriate time. And strength is always a part of that. Conditioning is always a part of that. When you think of conditioning, what you're thinking of is putting a platform in place. And I know it's been said that it's an old idea, but it's still the bedrock, guys. It's still the underpinning, most important aspect of any training program. No conditioning, no performance, no form. And interestingly, the mind's the same way. No conditioning, mentally, no positive outlook, no introspection, and you just get a whole lot of chaos. You're like a boat all at sea. So this is a sport-specific demand on the body to trigger adaptation. And that's what we're talking about. Conditioning triggers adaptation. So often when we think of adaptation, we think about pushing ourselves to the nth degree so we can cause an adaptation. But conditioning causes the adaptation, not the single session, not that fartlek session, not that track session at breakneck speed, not that ergo session at 380 watts. It's like a telephone book. The thicker a telephone book gets, the more difficult it is to rip. If you've only got a few pages open, boom, you can rip it in half. If it's thicker, you've got no chance, right? So that pertains to all aspects of our sport: swimming, biking, running, mental aspects even. The focus on this training is to basically put together the necessary volume in order to cause the conditioning to give you the adaptations that you need to be able to function at high pace for low oxygen cost. Now, the next thing that I've talked about in previous videos is strength. God damn it, you need strength. And, if it's a 70.3 focus, or if it's an Ironman focus, you must be strong. And that doesn't just mean sport specific. You need to be functionally strong. You need to be able to have enough resistance training and target mobility, stability, and strength around the core, around the aspects, the hips, the aspects that hold you in place, which doesn't mean that you need to do 1,000 burpees or deadlifts and squats, but it doesn't hurt at the right time. Once again, at the appropriate time. But the sport-specific strength is very important as well. Swimming. Personally, I like to use big paddles, big flat paddles, build up a lot of resistance. If you're getting, tension in the shoulders, then you're doing something wrong. There's something wrong with your stroke. It's not you're not strong enough. So these are aspects that we need to take into consideration. That strength, that underlying strength that comes from adaptation and conditioning, is part of that flow on from conditioning. So there always, and I'll say it again, always needs to be strength aspect in the program, certainly year in and year out. If you want to improve year in and year out, your functional strength has to improve. It has to hold up it has to be the underpinning focus of the program. And I guess you could say that the next part of this pillar focus is recovery, right? Seems obvious. If you're not recovered, then you're just flogging a dead horse. And okay, if it's written, the program may be the ideal, you know, even a program that I put together that may seem like an ideal. It's not realistic because no coach is in your body. Absolutely no coach. Only you are in your body. You know when you're overreaching. Your body will tell you when you're overreaching. This is where recovery becomes an aspect that not only becomes that also becomes a very critical part of the whole pillar or the whole picture. The recovery has to be adequate. There has to be enough sleep. There has to be enough lack of stress for you to be able to recover. If you're stressed to the hilt from work and you're only sleeping 5 hours a night and you think you're going to get up and train hard the next day, you're kidding yourself. You've got to back it down. You've got to back it down. And this is where you need a coach to be able to look at the thing and say, well, hold the mirror up and say, well, you know what, you're burning the candle at both ends here. It doesn't make any sense. And this is another aspect to conditioning. Recovery is conditioning. Taking enough rest is conditioning. And this is where we get a little bit lost as athletes because we think we need to be tough and hard. We also need to be gentle. We also need to be caring to ourselves because the bottom line is this machine that you're preparing also has a mental aspect. It has a whole athlete aspect that needs taking care of if you want to pull the best from it. You want to go to the well in the next race or the next Ironman or the next 70.3. You're not going to go to that well if you're not recovered. You're not going to go to that well on 5 hours sleep a night. You're not going to go to that well if you're not conditioned. You're not going to go to that well if you're not strong. You're going to be kicking stones and looking at the ground. And that's an important aspect of this whole deal. It's another important pillar. And then, of course, finally, nutrition and fuel is another massive part of this conditioning, right? So we have this idea that our nutrition plans need to be rigid. They need to be of a certain value that we can farm it out. I can go to a dietitian and have them tell me what I should eat. And it's absolutely, it doesn't work in the real world. Once again, you have to do trial and error for yourself because we're all individuals. We all have different ways of functioning. And we all find out through trial and error things that work and things that sometimes we don't expect to work. Like, for instance, in my case, intermittent fasting works amazingly well. I eat in an 8-hour window. Now, you know, and we're always told that we can't train off that. It's not true. We can train off that. And we can force our bodies onto higher levels of fats. We can adapt through conditioning. That doesn't mean that we're not getting enough protein, enough iron, enough nutrients, enough minerals, all the rest of it that go into causing a great recovery way of eating. It just means that we're giving our gut an extended period of fasting to heal. And when it heals, it plays ball and we're conditioning ourselves for excellence. And I think that's the final part. Now, there may be aspects of this that people don't agree with. Once again, it comes down to what's important for you and comes down to trial and error. But it's all conditioning, all of it. You must condition yourself in order to perform. Thanks for listening.